If you need a little inspiration to start something new or want to figure out how to get more done in less time, this two-part episode is for you. Ben and I break down our favorite rituals morning and night in order to take things in our lives to the next level, as well as have more peace and confidence. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Benjamin Manley and Mark Labriola II.
The Friday Habit is for creators, entrepreneurs, and agency owners looking for actionable ideas on how to grow their business and be more profitable.
We'll pull from our combined knowledge of over 20 years and interview thought leaders that will inspire you and give you the motivation you need to kick your business into high gear. Buckle up. It's Friday. Or as I like to say, Friday.
Never heard that one before on this podcast.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Yeah. Actually, my good buddy Joel, we've been friends, man. We were in Boy Scouts together. We lived on the same street together. He listens to the podcast, and he left us a nice review.
Nice.
So he says, "Don't wait for tomorrow. Start today." Exclamation point. Love the short episodes. It's a great companion on my drive to work. Great advice and reminders to not let ourselves or our businesses lack improvement because of the next issue or pressing problem coming up. Take time each week to evaluate and improve and tweak as needed so your business strives and thrives. Great work, guys.
Dang. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And actually, Joel just told me about this app that I wanted to tell you guys about. So I don't know if Mark, you use some kind of like white noise app, don't you? Or something that has like something for focus. Do you use anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple like computer apps, Pomodoro. We had a whole episode on that. White noise, though,
or like nature sounds. I mean, I kind of put those all in the same category. I don't know if you use anything like that.
Yeah, no nature sounds, but definitely like some meditation playlists on Spotify.
Right.
And then at night when we sleep, I have like this little like air purifier that I turn on that kind of makes some white noise. It helps my brain turn off.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I love especially like rain sounds. And at night, I like rain sounds with like crickets or things like that. And Joel told me about this app called Portal for iOS. It's very, very beautifully designed. It's very minimal, has a really cool kind of feel to it, like you're going into another world, and it has 3D sound to it. So it sounds a lot like, they say in the app that it's like based off of what they use for VR and stuff to do like 3D sound.
Sweet.
So with my Apple AirPods Pro and my Portal app, now I can kind of put those in, like get rid of all the noise. And then there's all these different sounds. There's like Amazon Rainforest, all these other ones. It's just done so well. It's the best one I've seen. It also has Pomodoro timer built into it, has a sleep timer built into it. And
oh geez, now I gotta get it.
Even if you have like Philips Hue lights, it actually connects with them and then adjusts the color of your...
What? Yeah. Get out of here.
Yeah. So he told me about this, and it's free, I think, for like 3 different portals that you can get in different atmospheres or whatever. And then I think it's $4 to unlock everything. But I was really impressed with it, so I thought I'd recommend it to you and our listeners.
Yeah, love it. Downloading it right now.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you're enjoying the podcast, like Joel, and then please rate us in the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen. And you can find that link in our show notes at the top. Helps us reach more people and grow this community. And last week we started a challenge, and full transparency, we're batch recording a few episodes today, so we won't know the response to our challenge for the next 2 episodes. So we're going to keep putting out a challenge. Mark, do you want to explain what we're doing, what we're challenging people with?
Yeah, well, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to generate a random noun on the internet and then see how you work that into your review.
Yeah, so if you review us, try to work this word into it. So
Ben, why don't you do our random noun generator?
All right, your random noun to work into your review of the Friday Habit is consequence.
Consequence, nice. I like it.
So when you leave us a review this week, work in the word consequence.
Sweet. All right. Well, so today we're talking about rituals, our evening and our morning rituals. But on this episode, we're actually going to start with our evening rituals. As I always like to say, a great day starts the day before.
You say that all the time.
It's like pretty much every time we hang out, I'm like,
everybody knows that about you.
Everybody knows that about me. So I think, a lot of times I feel like when we hear how other people do things or hear encouraging things, encouraging stories from other people, it really inspires us and gives us ideas on maybe things to do differently. And so I think that if we kind of share what we do for our rituals, maybe that might inspire somebody else to tweak what they're currently doing or add something new to their list. I think rituals can really be anything, right? I mean, it can be as small as putting socks on in the morning, or as complicated as making an omelet. And it also could be weird too, right? I
Right.
mean, there's some weird things out there that people do as rituals.
Yeah, that's very very true. Even the word ritual sounds a little weird. So I mean, I don't know if you all would rather think of it as habits. You can think of habits as a routine or as a ritual or whatever it might be. But yeah, all those things kind of build up to create a routine for your life that can kind of help you get started the right way. So starting the evening before makes a ton of sense to me too, because I feel like I do a lot of planning for my next day the night before, and getting to bed at the right time, all that kind of stuff is important. So yeah, Mark, do you want to kind of cover your rituals first?
Yeah. So a lot of my evening rituals start off right after work. So after I'm done with work, I usually will get home, and if my wife's not making dinner, or if I get home with enough time, I usually make dinner for the family. So the past several nights I've been making dinner, and it's just a way for me to kind of like wind down. I'm focusing on a particular thing. I'm serving my family,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I'm having a glass of wine. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll usually start off the evening by making dinner for the family, and then that moves really into dinner family time.
Mm-hmm.
We find that our family unit just really works better when we can all sit down and connect over a meal. And we do this thing called highlights and lowlights.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go around the table and share our highlights and lowlights from the day with each other.
I love that.
And so that's kind of how that goes. And then usually after dinner, we will head on a family walk, or depending on the weather, we may just stay in and play like a game, something simple like cards or Farkle or something like that. Or we may go in the backyard and play football or basketball or throw a frisbee around. But a lot of times we'll go on a walk when the weather's nice and just get some blood flowing and do that. And then we usually start prepping for bed. I like to get the kids to bed. I usually read a particular book with my boys. We usually have like a book we're going through, whether it's The Hobbit, or right now we're reading The Secret Garden, which is a classic. So we try to find like classic books, and then we'll just read like a chapter.
Right.
So we'll spend like, several weeks reading one book.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll read them, get them off to bed, and then try to have some tea time with the wife.
Tea time. What's that?
Yeah. So it's just what it says, like make some water, dip in some tea bags.
You put some leaves in some water. How's
That's
that
right.
work? Yeah. You sit down and talk, chat about your day kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, especially when you're married, communication is just key to a healthy, happy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with communication. It is not easy for me. For some reason, I have so many things going on in my mind, and a lot of times how I feel connecting is not how my wife feels connecting.
Yep.
And so I may feel like, hey, like we had dinner, we went on a walk, we did all this stuff, like we were connecting all night.
Right.
And she'd be like, no, we weren't connecting.
Yeah.
And so it's important for her that we sit down, have face-to-face like conversation, just the two of us. So having some tea and hanging out, talking with each other.
I love that idea because it gives you, I think one of the things about making a good ritual is having a specific place that you do it sometimes, or having a specific taste or a smell or something that that kind of makes it a habit, and something that a routine that you go through that you have to physically do. It's the idea of making tea being like a trigger of, okay, we're having tea. It's something you look forward to. We're going to have tea and we're going to sit down and talk about our day and connect. I think that's a great way to do it. It's connecting with an actual activity, not just like, oh, we're going to talk for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll kind of have that time together, talk. I'll share, things with her. She can share about her day with me. And then I start prepping for the next day. Like my mind goes into next day.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, I like to wake up around 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And
Nice.
in order for me to do that, I need to get to bed by 10:30. Otherwise, it makes it extremely difficult for me to pop out of bed with
Right.
enthusiasm at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so really it comes down to being intentional, right? Because it's easy to then hop on to social media or like get on Netflix and start watching some shows. And then it becomes 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And your next day really gets derailed
Yeah.
because it's harder for you to get out of bed. And so this is where it just starts to come down to intentionality, where it's like, all right, like this is what I want to do. And so this is what I have to do in order to do what I want to do.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so I start prepping for the next day. So when you wake up that early, sometimes, and especially with part of my morning routine, which we'll get in next week, is, getting to the gym,
Yeah.
is, laying out your clothes, getting all the stuff that you need to just kind of robotically get up and do.
Mm-hmm.
And that even comes down to like, having the coffee already ready, like on a timer so that it starts, making itself before I wake up.
Nice.
And so getting all that kind of prepped and then get to bed, get to bed early.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your prep for the next day includes things like getting coffee ready, putting out your clothes. Do you do any like work related stuff? Do you think about work in the evening, or you try to avoid like thinking about work in the evening and for the next day? Or what do you usually do with that?
Yeah, so the one thing that I will do is I'll try to kind of just reflect on the day and write
Mm-hmm.
like 3 positive things down before I go to bed. I use the app Day One as a journal. I just really like it. It allows me to kind of put ideas in quickly and then have those ideas searchable, as well as, journal. And they actually have features where you can have a template essentially.
Oh, kind of like writing prompts or something, or ask you questions, or
Yeah, exactly. So, if I go into my templates and I have like a day summary, essentially,
mm-hmm.
I can go in there and each question kind of answer that question quickly and then kind of check it off my list, So one of these questions is like, any notable things happened today? I've been thinking about ...
Right.
and then what's next?
Hmm.
And so sometimes I don't always have an answer for all those,
Right.
but I find that if I can at least put something down, it gets it off my mind. A lot of times if I go to bed with too many things on my mind, I'm thinking about whatever, like it's hard for me to sleep because I just want to get up and then start doing something.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of my, I feel like it's kind of not necessarily lame, but just it.
No, not at all. It's very family centric, which I admire. You know what I mean? You have a young family and you're focusing most of this. I mean, the theme to me is you're focusing on making your family a priority in the evenings. You're doing a little bit of prep to get yourself set up for success the next day. But I think that's really cool. It makes sense.
For me growing up, I kind of had a very like fractured family, dysfunctional family. And so I feel like hopefully by creating processes and systems and creating routines within the family that helps us be more intentional, because it's easy to not be intentional, right? It's easy just to work up until the very second you have to eat, and then it's scrambling to get people to getting their homework done and get off to
Right.
bed, and then
Right.
you want to maybe watch a couple shows to kind of wind down before you go to bed, whatever. But then your life really starts to pass you by, and you really start to lose a lot of the things that are really important about each day, and really I think what it comes down to is that being intentional about these things allows you to actually do them,
Yeah.
So when you make them a priority or part of your routine or your ritual, then you can actually do them. Because I think a lot of us think like, oh, I would like to have dinner every night with the family. Oh, I would like to go on a family walk, with the family. But then you never put anything in place in order to make that happen. And so then it never gets done. And then for me, I have a 12, 9, and a 7-year-old. And with my 12-year-old, it's you always hear old people saying, time goes by so fast, cherish every moment. And you're like, yeah. But then it's like, I'm looking at my 12-year-old and I'm thinking, dang, like he's only got like 6 more years in my house. Like I have him less time than I've had him. And that 12 years went by so quickly. Like I've blinked and he's 12 now, going into 7th grade. And I'm like, man, I just want to make sure that for the next, years that I have my kids in my home, that I build strong bonds and really strong family unit, so that as they get older and move on and move away, they'll always want to come back home and they'll always have fond memories of being, with the family. So
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. A few things that I think were my favorite takeaways from your routine is I really like the highlights and lowlights that you talked about. I remember when I came and visited you. I think we talked about that a little bit. I did get to eat dinner with your family one time, which was awesome, there in Denver. And I think, we actually were doing that at Knapsack on Fridays with our team. But after I saw you doing that at your house, we started doing something similar. I think my kids call it, what's your good and bad thing is what they call it.
Nice.
They're my son's 10, my daughter's 7, and our foster daughter that's living with us right now is 6. So she'll usually be the one that speaks up. It's like, what was your good and bad thing today? And she'll initiate that conversation every evening around the dinner table. And it's really cool. But I think that's a great way to open up and have conversation that's like, basically it tells you what people to care about in your family. Like what was the thing that really made a big difference in that day? What was the thing that was tough and why, and being able to kind of encourage them in whatever that stuff is. So
yeah, and I think that it helps you process your emotions. Once again, I think I've said this before, I'm not that great. Like I'm a very emotional person, but I don't know how to process how I'm feeling a lot of times. And this is something, credit to my wife, is that she started the whole highlight and low light thing, and it's just a great way for kids to really talk about how they're feeling. Like even if it's just as simple as like, what was really good today? Yep. Oh, I, got done with school at noon. What was really bad? It was like, oh, it was raining and I couldn't go out and play, something as simple as that. But being able to just think through those kind of things, they help you process your emotions. And I think if you can learn how to do that at a young age, you'll just be more stable and a better person and, just give back to society in a more positive way. So
I love that.
So like I said, I think having a family focused evening, one is my life is consumed by my business, right? I mean, I'm always thinking about my business and I'm always thinking about how to make it better and how to grow it and hiring and signing new clients and marketing and advertising. All these things are always going on in my brain, and I'm just consumed by it constantly. But having, these several hours in the evening to slow down and really focus on what really matters at the end of the day, it makes your life just better, because when my business is gone and when it's done and whatnot, like my relationships with my family and my kids and my wife are the things that are going to last and that will be around way, way after my business is come and gone. And so I think just being intentional about that is important. It's something that a lot of times we easily, forget about, because you get caught up in the idea of, I just want to make enough money for my family. Like I'm doing this for my family. I'm, whatever. But then a lot of times if you were to ask your kids, I hear from a lot of friends, they say, yeah, my dad worked constantly. He traveled, for work, or my mom worked as well. And both my parents worked. And honestly, like I would have rather have had less stuff and gone on less vacation and just spent more time with my, parents. And so, I'm just trying to make sure that I don't make those mistakes and kind of learn from the previous generation and whatnot. And then also, it makes it looking forward to doing things, like we do Taco Tuesday, it's like
nice.
Something cheesy. It's like, oh, it's taco night.
Something cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, cheesy tacos.
Yeah.
And so, it just makes it enjoyable and a good time. So anyways, that's my rituals. We stick to this pretty religiously. On Fridays, we usually do like a family movie night. And then weekends are kind of open game. I try to take over a lot on the weekends so my wife can have a little break and have some mental space for herself.
Yeah.
And then try to get things done around the house and then, back at it.
I love it. Yeah. And some of our listeners might have been thinking, hey, I'm going to get some great productivity tips to like double down on my business and get even more done. And you might get some of that out of this podcast. But I think in the end, productivity, I think this is something, I think it was Sean Blanc from thesweetsetup.com. One of his productivity courses that I got, he talks about meaningful productivity. And it's about like what actually getting the things done that actually matter, not just getting more stuff done, but actually, I think he says, spending your time and attention on the things that matter most is productivity. And so in your case, being with your family, that's high priority to you, which makes a lot of sense and I admire. And that means your productivity is actually spending your time and attention with them. And so you having these routines set up is actually a very productive way to make sure that you're not eating into that time with your work or something else. So I think that's, it's probably better than any business tip you would have gotten out of today's podcast.
So what about you, man?
I know. I'm like, man, we just close out the show there. That was great stuff. I'll skip over a few things. I mean, I think we have a lot of similarities, so I'll try to focus on the things that are different about what I do. But one thing I love, and this will come up in the morning episode too, but I love having a little bit of separation between work and home. And I live only 3 miles from the office, so I enjoy the luxury of being able to ride my bike back and forth. So I have an electric bike, the Rad Rover, which I think you have the same one.
Yeah, I have the same one based off your recommendation.
It's so good. I love it. It's a very affordable electric bike. It's actually an electric fat tire bike, which is super fun. Radpowerbikes.com. Not an advertiser with us yet.
But hey, we would.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm a big fan of theirs, honestly. And
yeah, me too.
Very affordable for an electric bike. And so I ride that a lot, and it kind of enables me to pedal as much as I want. I can get a lot of exercise if I want to, or if I don't want to come into the office or get home completely sweaty and need to take a shower, then it does give you that option to like pull the throttle or use some pedal assist or whatever. So I love that. And it really, me being outside, I don't know if it's just because I love nature so much, but me being outside, feeling the wind in my face and like feeling the cold or the hot or whatever it is makes me feel just more alive, more part of the world. And so I love being able to go back and forth to work that way. And it helps me separate my work from home too. It has this kind of time of separation that works better for me than just riding in a car, I think, because I'm outside. And for me, it helps. Another thing I do is I ride my one wheel, which if you're not familiar with the one wheel, it's this, it's kind of like a skateboard with a giant go-kart tire in the middle. And when you ride it, it feels like you're snowboarding across pavement. And it's so much fun.
I'm just glad you wear a helmet when you ride because I'm always afraid that you're just going to eat it.
Dude, it is a little scary, but it's also, I think that's also need a little bit of danger in my life, live a pretty safe life. So it's kind of fun to live on the edge a tiny bit. But no, the one wheel is a ton of fun. It's like snowboarding on pavement, which does actually sound pretty dangerous now that I say it like that. But yeah, that's a super fun thing and basically that builds in some fun into my day, which I really appreciate. If nothing else, I'm actually going to enjoy my 15-minute commute to work and back. That's going to be some fun built into my day and a little bit of exercise built into my day. So nice. That's one thing I love. In the evening, I'm going to go through every step. We talked about dinner a little bit and stuff. I read to my kids before they go to bed most nights. My wife especially has a love of reading. I've kind of switched over to audiobooks in the last decade or so. So I don't do a lot of like physical book reading anymore or even Kindle or anything. I do a lot of audiobooks, but my wife has a really deep love of reading, which I really respect. And it's something that our kids love too, because of how much she's read to them. So some nights I'll read to them. Sometimes she will, but that's a big part of our evening. Also, I try to at least once a week spend time with each of my kids, like sitting in their room, like before they go to sleep, because it's the time when they're the most open to talk about stuff, because they'd probably rather talk to you than go to bed, but maybe they didn't want to talk to you, instead of play a video game. But, once it's like the choice is like, I could fall asleep or talk to dad. Like I have a lot of stuff to say all of a sudden. So, sitting in their room, before I turn out the light and maybe talking with them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Those are honestly some of the best conversations I have with my kids. And I actually learn things about how they feel about life, or they might ask me advice about things or whatever. So I love that time, just having a talk with the kids at least once a week in their rooms before they fall asleep. Also, and I don't do this very often, honestly, but the times I have done it, I found it pretty useful. Just some reflective journaling, like you mentioned with your day one journal. I usually use a paper journal with a pen and just sit down in my bed before I go to sleep and write down a few thoughts, maybe for 10 minutes. I'm not super consistent about that, but when I do it, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, that was good for me to reflect on my day since it's not something I naturally do. So I find that helpful. Another thing that really helps me is choosing a most important task for the next day. So being like, all right, what is the one big thing I need to get done tomorrow if I get nothing else done? And doing that really helps me focus and realize what stuff is not as important. So
I
I
love
like to
that.
choose, one big thing. And then there's always other stuff I need to do too. And so I'll usually write a to-do list for the next day so that when I wake up, I'll look at my calendar, I'll look at my to-do list, maybe choose which task I'm actually going to do tomorrow, and then choose my most important one. And then I kind of feel better when I wake up. I don't like making my to-do list in the day when I wake up. I already feel behind. Maybe that's just me, but then I'm like, if I know when I wake up what I'm already doing, I feel a lot better. I also, similar to you, like to lay out my clothes for the next day or whatever it might be. And then when I'm falling asleep, I usually put on a speaker with, like I said, cricket sounds or rain sounds or something like that. Some nature noises to help me fall asleep. So yeah, that's kind of my general evening rituals.
Do you kind of follow those on a consistent basis then?
Yeah, most of those I do. I'd say the journaling is not super consistent.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a really busy day, maybe I won't do all of these things, but I'll do the majority of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the most important thing, choosing that and kind of going over to-do lists for tomorrow. Seems like if you do that in the evening, you're kind of away from it enough to
Right.
where you can look into it more
Mm-hmm.
thoughtfully. I feel like sometimes, yeah, in the mornings, emails start coming in, like all this stuff starts to happen. And so then my mind gets cluttered and I'm just like starting to put out fires or just get something done. And so I really like doing that in the evening, looking into your day, the next day to see what's most important. And then just taking time, to talk to your kids before bed, a couple times a week, just sitting in there in the dark or something and just saying, hey, like, do you have any questions for me?
Do you have any questions? Now's your chance.
You want to talk? I think
Yeah.
that's cool. And I think that your kids will probably remember that. It's interesting to think about, what kids remember. I try to think back when I was 10
Mm-hmm.
and, I remember that I came to live with my dad when I was 10 years old and we had only gone to my grandma's house like 3 years in a row for Christmas. So 10, 11, and 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad got remarried and we started not having this Christmas tradition. But it's so interesting to me that even in my life now, I'm 39 years old, that when I think to the holidays, like those are the memories, those 3 years from the time I was 10 to 13 or 12,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
are the 3 years that really stand out in my brain about like what holidays should be and how they should, feel and all that kind of stuff. And so I
Yeah.
think about, with our kids, we may see something as just insignificant or very temporal, but by us just being intentional a few times, throughout their lives, an impact that will make all the way into their, 40s as an adult. Like your kids may say, yeah, I just remember my dad would, sit in there and just talk with us and
Yeah.
answer questions and stuff. And that's cool, man. That's special.
Yeah. And actually, one other thing I just remembered, this is kind of an odd one, and I don't do it every night, but I do it every once in a while. I'll take all the highlights and lowlights, like you say, are the good and bad things that they told me during dinner, and I'll improv a little acoustic guitar song right before they fall asleep. I'll grab my acoustic guitar, go upstairs.
Nice.
After I read to them, then they're like they're
Uh-huh.
like laying in bed about to fall asleep. Then I'll like make the chorus is always the same basically, but the verses are different each night. So it's like the same melody like for the chorus, but then I'll like make up something about like whatever they said bad happened that day. Like, oh, my friend
Teacher
stole
gave
my
it to
or whatever. My friend stole my Nintendo, but you know.
That's awesome.
So then
That's
they think
cool.
it's hilarious. They're like, Dad, how do you do that? And it's honestly, it's pretty horrible. It's not any good, but they think it's like, wow, how did you make that rhyme with that thing? And how do you do that? It like blows their mind, and they just love that
Yeah.
I'm singing a song about them. So that's just a
so
kind of fun
awesome.
thing that I do every once in a while. But
That's awesome.
yeah,
Well, you guys, hopefully this was an enjoyable episode, entertaining, and gave you a little insight into our lives, get to know us a little bit better. I think if you want to implement something this week, think about a new ritual that you can start doing in your evenings, a routine, whether that's with your family or with a friend or a loved one or something, but create something new and start to do it on a consistent basis. Next week, we're going to talk about our mornings and the things that we do to get our days going in the right direction.
Can't wait. And if you guys want to learn more about the Friday Habit, go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the very bottom of the page, you can download our PDF. It's a guide to the Friday Habit system that shows you how to set aside a full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business, maybe Fridays. And I think that's all I got for you, Mark.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, listening to the Friday Habit. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.